Hello there and Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the My English Matters podcast. I'm Amna, and today's episode is going to be a little bit different because I am going to be talking about some of the misconceptions that people may have about learning English. Okay, so a lot of these ideas have come up in the comments section of our YouTube videos, live sessions, and on social media, especially on Facebook and TikTok. By the way, we are on TikTok. Well, we have been there for a while now, but lately we have been exploring it a bit more to reach more people. And so if you are not following us there yet, be sure to check us out after this episode. Now, most of the people who follow us are lovely. They are supportive, they are encouraging, and they are kind. And thank you for that. But once in a while, we do get a comment that makes us pause. And we realize if someone is thinking this, maybe there are more who are thinking it too. So instead of just ignoring those comments or just deleting them, I thought, let's talk about them. Let's turn those comments and common misconceptions into teachable moments. And just to be clear, some of these comments were made on our own videos, and some we've seen on other English teachers' content. But I still think it's worth addressing them because maybe you have been thinking the same thing too. All right, are you ready? Let's get into it. Misconception number one: you shouldn't use words like gonna or gotta. That is bad English. So, we recently posted a clip of an older video that I did where I was having a conversation with Madam Azima. And I actually said, you gotta, which is a reduction of the phrase, you have got to. Now, to be clear, this video was a conversation, meaning that we were speaking naturally and informally. And in spoken English, especially in informal settings, we often use phrases like gonna and gotta. But somebody in the comments said you should use you have got to because you are teaching proper English, something across those lines, right? So here's the thing: gonna and gotta are real, natural parts of spoken English, especially in casual conversation. They are called reductions. So, for example, gonna is a reduction of going to. For example, I'm going to call her later. Gotta is the reduction for got to. I got to finish this first. Are they appropriate in formal essays or academic writing? No. But are they useful in casual conversation, movies, and everyday speaking? Absolutely. So, in fact, we teach our students when and where it's okay to use these expressions so they can sound more natural when speaking English. Now, if you are preparing for the IELTS speaking test, here's something important to note. Using contractions like I'm instead of I am or you're instead of you are is actually encouraged. It shows fluency and natural use of the language, and it can positively affect your score, especially in the fluency and coherence category. But when it comes to reductions like gonna, gotta, or kinda, our recommendation is only use them if they come naturally to you. So don't force them into your speaking if they don't feel comfortable or familiar, because it can sound unnatural or rehearsed, right? So focus instead on clear communication, appropriate vocabulary, and natural rhythm. So, yes, contractions, use them for your IELTS speaking test. Reductions, use those with care and only if you feel natural and it's appropriate in the context. So in the end, our role as your teachers is to teach you so that you are able to know when it's appropriate to use contractions, when it's appropriate to use reductions in speaking and writing, and also when it's not appropriate. Okay, misconception number two is if you make grammar mistakes, you shouldn't be teaching or you shouldn't be speaking English. Ooh, this one can sting a little, right? But let's talk about it. Over the past few years, we have seen more and more non-native English speakers. Non-native means people who don't speak English as their first language, right? So we've seen a lot more non-native English speakers teach English online. And yes, some of them may make the occasional mistake. But should that stop them from teaching English? I don't think so. So here's the thing. Even native speakers make grammar mistakes. And if I'm being honest, I've caught myself making mistakes too, especially when I'm doing live video and there's no chance to pause or edit. But take note, if you are a teacher teaching English, I would recommend that you pre record your videos and make sure that they are edited to remove any grammar mistakes so that you are actually teaching correctly. And there's a big difference, though, between making a slip when you're speaking off the cuff and like in live session and making consistent errors in writing, because writing is more permanent, right? So yes, if you want to teach English professionally, you do need to have a strong foundation and a good grasp of the language. And in Malaysia, the recommended level of English for teachers who teach English is C1, which is the advanced level on the CEFR scale, which is the Common European Framework for Reference. Sorry, the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, the CEFR. And that is a system that describes language ability across 6 levels. So we have the A1 beginner level, A2 elementary, B1 intermediate, B2 upper intermediate, C1 advanced, and C2 proficient. So if you're not sure what your level is, you can take tests to find out. In fact, we actually created a self-assessment tool over at myenglishmatters.com/CEFR so you can get a quick idea of where you are. But here's something important for you to understand, right? Even at the C1 level, you might still make grammar mistakes, and that is perfectly normal. C1 means that you can express yourself fluently and spontaneously. You can use English flexibly in social, academic, and professional situations. You can understand complex texts and write in a clear, structured way. But it doesn't mean that you will never make a mistake. Even native speakers mess up sometimes, especially when they are tired, they're nervous, or they're speaking quickly. So if you are at the C1 level and you still slip up here and there, it doesn't mean that you're not good enough. It doesn't mean that you can't teach. It just means that you're human. And teaching English isn't about being perfect. It's about being clear, supportive, and able to help others improve. And that's what we aim to do here at My English Matters. We're not here to show off or pretend that we are flawless. We are here to grow together. All right, so misconception number 3 is don't mix English and Malay, just stick to one language. Okay, let's talk about this. Code switching. So, code switching is when a person switches between 2 or more languages in a single conversation or even within a single sentence. And it's actually very normal in multilingual countries like Malaysia. And it's not just us, our neighbors in Singapore, the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, and Brunei, they all do this too. And should we be code switching if we are teaching English? That's a good question. So here at My English Matters, we actually rarely code switch, and that is actually intentional. We know that most of our listeners are Malaysians, but since we are online, we also have a growing number of students and followers from all over the world. So I'd say that we speak about 95% English and occasionally slip in a Malay word or two, or say la here and there. If you know, you know what la is. And that said, we've seen how some English teachers, especially those teaching in primary schools, they switch between English and Malay in their lessons. And that is totally understandable because it helps their students understand better. And that's the goal, right? You want your students to understand better. And also in workplaces here in Malaysia, we know that people commonly use Manglish. And if you're from Singapore, you might call it Singlish. And both of these are full of code switching. It happens naturally for many of us who are bilingual or multilingual, especially when we are speaking with people who share our background. So there are a few reasons why we may code switch. Sometimes it's just easier to express something in one language over the other. It helps us connect culturally and emotionally. We might not know the exact word in one language, so we switch to the other language that we are more confident with. And even the social setting matters. We may speak differently in a meeting versus at lunch. For example, in meetings, I use English, but when I meet friends for lunch, I speak Malay. And sometimes I'm having these meetings and lunches with the same people, but because it's a different setting, I'm using different languages. And sometimes it's just for emphasis. Switching languages can add color to what we are saying. So is it wrong? No, not at all. Code switching is actually a strength. It's not a weakness. It shows flexibility, connection, and awareness. And it's something multilingual speakers do with ease and intelligence. Now, for our students, we want them to be able to adapt, to be able to switch between speaking full English when needed and mixing languages when it's appropriate. And many of them have to work with international clients or colleagues who don't speak Malay. So while we occasionally drop in a Malay word here or there, or a Malay phrase here or there, our focus is still on teaching accurate, confident English. Because at the end of the day, we're here to support our students who not only want to speak English with confidence, but they also want to use it accurately in different situations, whether that's with fellow Malaysians or with people from around the world. Okay, misconception number 4 is you have to go overseas to become fluent. That would be nice, wouldn't it? But it's not true. So not too long ago, I did a live video about how to train yourself to think in English. And if you haven't watched it yet, or you haven't listened to it, go to our podcast. It's episode number 14, 5 ways you can train yourself to think in English. And in that episode, I shared how English is actually my second language because it's the second language that I was exposed to. As a child, my parents spoke Malay with me, and my mother still speaks Malay with me now. But when we moved to England, I was 6 years old. English became the first language I was formally educated in. And someone left a comment on that video saying that I was lying. They said that English must be my first language. And I actually get where they are coming from. Yes, a big reason that I am fluent today is because I spent 8 years growing up in England. Would I still be fluent if I hadn't spent my childhood there? Honestly, I would never know. But here's what I do know. I've met so many people who have never even set foot outside of this country. They've never even set foot outside of Malaysia, and they are fluent in English. And some of them speak better English than the people that I know who grew up in the UK. So no, you don't have to go to the UK, the US, or any other English-speaking country to become fluent. And yes, living in an English-speaking country, it can help you become more fluent because you're constantly surrounded by that language. You're basically learning on the job. You're thrown into an environment where you have to speak English, whether it's ordering food, or going to school, or asking for directions. So yes, that kind of immersion can speed things up. But not everyone has the privilege to travel or live overseas, right? So the next best thing is to try to recreate that kind of environment for yourself. You can surround yourself with English through books, podcasts, YouTube videos, movies, or conversations. You can speak English at home or at work, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Try finding a speaking partner or join an English speaking class or community. Here at My English Matters, we teach English online. So make sure you're on our email list and we'll notify you when we open registration for any of our programs. And just keep using what you learn in real life situations. Fluency doesn't come from your location, it comes from action. And someone recently asked me, how do I become fluent? And I told them, learn, practice, implement, then repeat that cycle again and again. And that's how you grow. We've had students who have become confident speakers just by showing up consistently for our online classes, right from their homes here in Malaysia. What mattered most wasn't where they were, it was how much they practiced and applied what they learned, and whether it was at work or in their personal lives. So remember, fluency isn't about your postcode, it's about practice. All right, my last misconception is if I don't sound like a native speaker, I'm not fluent. Okay, so let's clear this up once and for all. Fluency isn't about having a native accent. It's about how well you can express your ideas, how comfortable you feel speaking, and how smoothly your words come out. So English doesn't belong only to the native speakers. In fact, more people in the world speak English as a second language than as a first language. It's actually the most widely used second language globally. Sure, languages like Mandarin have more native speakers, but English leads when it comes to people learning it as an additional language. Now, when people say sound like a native speaker, what they usually mean is the accent, right? So we have a student. She told us that she has a strong Chinese Malaysian accent and she wanted to get rid of that accent. She told us that people looked down on her because of how she sounded. And I'm not going to pretend that people don't judge accents. Sadly, some people do. And sadly, there are going to be people who think that if you sound British or American or Australian, you're more intelligent or you're better off than those who don't speak with those accents. But thankfully, there are more people who don't think that way. You don't have to sound like a native English speaker or have a British, American, or Australian accent. And there is a big difference between accent and pronunciation. So, what we encourage at My English Matters is for students to work on their pronunciation, making sure that words are clear and easy to understand. So, for example, because of my background, I'd say that my own accent is a mix of British and the Malaysian accent because I've been here for so long already. And trust me, there have been times where I have mispronounced words. I've said words wrongly too. Take the word vegetable. So many Malaysians, they would say vegetable, but the natural way is actually vegetable. It's not pronounced vegetable. The correct pronunciation is vegetable. So it's less about your accent and more about clear, accurate pronunciation. So if somebody says, you sound very Malay, they're probably talking about your pronunciation and not really your accent. So if you have a strong Chinese, Malay, Indian, or whatever other regional accent that you may have, you don't need to get rid of that accent. Focus more on pronouncing words clearly, and that is the key. And here's something I want you to remember. I know plenty of people with their non English accents who speak English fluently as a second or third language, and they're confident too. Many fluent speakers have accents, and I think it's a beautiful thing because your accent tells your story. Okay, so there you have it. Those are just 5 misconceptions that we often hear about learning and teaching English. Do you know any more? And I hope this episode gave you some clarity and maybe even some confidence to keep learning and speaking English in your own unique way. Let me know which point stood out the most to you. You can send us a message on Instagram or on TikTok. We are at My English Matters, or email us anytime at info@myenglishmatters.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, give us a review, or forward it to a friend who might need to hear this today. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now, and Assalamu alaikum.